Undead Heart, and I am the writer, director, editor, um, cinematographer most of the time. I did most of the behind the scenes work. I had some of the actors would occasionally I'd be like, hey, can you help me like dolly this thing? And then I'd have like an actor help me. But I was basically a one man crew. Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of ways I could answer this because on the one hand, I initially like kind of taught myself, but then I ended up doing these like film programs in high school where it was like there's like 15 minutes away from me. There's basically like this year-round summer camp for filmmakers. I work there now actually as like an intern for the summer. So I learned a lot there, and now like I do go to school at Boston University as a film major, and I'll be a junior in the fall.
Okay.
Um, my biggest inspiration was probably the last breakup I went through, um, and I don't mean that in some kind of like Taylor Swift revenge fantasy or anything like that. Without the context of seeing the movie, my movie is definitely about a breakup. It's a breakup story set during the zombie apocalypse, and I feel like just the experience of that specific grieving process of just being like, this is somebody who is meant a lot to me, but is just like gone from my life now. And there was like a time where I was like, oh, maybe she'll change her mind, maybe she'll come back, and then she didn't. And then I had to kind of come to terms with the fact that sometimes it would be unwise to try and artificially extend something that had run its course, and that's kind of a main theme in the film, where it's just about like, what if a relationship involved like one of the undead, where it's just like something that clearly like shouldn't still be a thing, but it is, and that's kind of the premise of the film. That's where I got it from. Yeah. So the actual shooting process was 3 days, and it wasn't even 3 full days. 2 of those days were only a couple of hours because I basically wanted to get. There was like going to be one huge day I knew about, and I just wanted to get everything that wasn't absolutely essential to get done that day out of the way, and so I was kind of planning it for like months in advance, and it was just a case where with COVID and schedules, I just knew it was going to be a while, so I kind of wrote this script, and then it was kind of just like lingering, and I'd occasionally go back to it and tweak it, knowing that like by May we'd be ready to like actually shoot it. And then editing took basically a week, but I did go back like months after the fact, and I did make a few minor tweaks, recuts, recolors, just because I do feel like if sometimes I don't have a lot of patience sometimes, where it's just like I'm so excited, I just want to bang out the edit as quickly as possible, spend just nonstop. But I feel like having some time, I went back, and then I was like, oh, maybe a couple of things here could have been, cleaned up just a little bit, and then for that cut is now what premiered at this festival, and that is the cut that I'll be using going forward. But it's like 95% the same movie. I just like made a couple tiny tweaks. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an easy answer for that, and that's just that. So I mentioned a minute ago that there was like one huge day where we shot like probably 80% of the movie, and the night before we shot this, an actor dropped out, and with about 12 hours heads up, we had to find a replacement. And the replacement that we found, Alessandro, who was an actor I did a high school play with 5 years earlier, and it was just a case where it was just like reaching out to everybody I knew, and like I just have worked with so many people that eventually I found someone was like, yeah, they're available, and we're just up at 11 p.m. the night before, and it was just like, it was possibly like the worst like 2 hours of my career, where I was just like, and just because of circumstances that it's kind of a long story, but we had to shoot it that weekend. That was the only time we could get everyone together for like the foreseeable future. It could be months before we had another crack at this. So it was really important that we shot it when we did, the weekend we did, and to lose an actress like the night before, like almost like devastated the movie. I like, you know, I don't. It was like an understandable like circumstance. Like I'm not mad about the fact that they dropped out, but it is still like frustrating as a filmmaker that, you know, not like frustrating, but like it is just it's an obstacle to overcome for sure. Like just bringing my like this story that I've been wanting to tell for so long to life was just like, you know, like the most thrilling experience of like my filmmaking so far. But there was also just like this responsibility of just being like, I was like, my actors were like, "It'll be fine, don't worry." But like I was like terrified that like because of the actor replacement, I was like very behind on schedule because I was going to set up for the shoot the night before, but I couldn't because instead I was trying to find a replacement. So I had everything got delayed. We had less time than we thought, and I was like genuinely worried that like we weren't going to finish the movie, and then what do we do because we don't have these people the next day. So yeah, that director for both. If I can answer that way. Like my biggest worry, like while I was shooting it, is that like just because I'm rushing everything and not spending as much time on things as I planned, I worried that the film wasn't going to turn out good. But I'm actually like really satisfied with the way it turned out, which is just insane considering like how I literally, there was a couple hours there, it's like we just might not have a movie, like we might just not be able to finish it. Yeah, it was just so insane filming this. Biggest concern was the kissing, because two actors have to kiss in this, and it's like very important to the story. And I had to like, you know, check up front with both of them when I was like offered them this part. I was like, hey, also like, you know, you're gonna have to kiss for this part, and like, I just like want to make sure that's okay with you. And I obviously I would never want to like trick or like pressure someone into doing something they weren't comfortable with. So that's why I want to be very transparent. But like it was like, just because it is this like very passionate love story, like it just was very important to, like, can't just be like awkwardly tapping each other's shoulders or something to show affection just because like with COVID. And I was just like, I was like, just like I wasn't sure if people would like still feel the same way the day of, because like COVID, like it keeps fluctuating, and we don't know. One day like you plan something and it's like COVID looks okay, and then something gets worse again. And I was like, up until like basically when we shot that scene, I was like, everybody's like cool with this. I just had to like make sure, and like if one of the actors was like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this anymore, obviously I wouldn't have made them do it. I would have found another way. The thing is, I don't know what that way would have been, because so much of that scene was just structured around like it's like a montage of them falling in love. So like, what do we do for that? Like, I don't know. And that was just something that I like worried about. It's like, what if they don't feel comfortable with this anymore? Again, like, not that like I wouldn't have been upset or anything, but it's just like what do I replace this with now? Yeah.
Okay.
So I had to wait until everyone was vaccinated, just because I was like, and that was like another thing. It's just like there's like more people in it too than like other movies I did during COVID, where it would just be like a cast of one or something, and that's how I'd like get around the like pandemic. There's just like two people like not in the same room at the same time, like talking to each other. I mean, several films like that, and like this is my first movie where it's like actually there's like 5 people in a room together, and it's like I was really hoping that like everybody was like taking COVID seriously and like got vaccinated and everything, and thankfully we did it. Nobody got sick or anything, and everything's good.
Excellent. So
it was I actually started out when I first took up filmmaking when I was 10 years old. I got really into stop motion animation, and that's something that I started doing again a lot more of during the pandemic. I also did do a few live action shorts, but it was like the narratives were very much structured around, it's like, okay, how do we do this in the absolute safest way possible, where if people are wearing masks and it's like part of the story somehow, or if they're not wearing masks, like they're like not actually, they'll be like, I did a movie where there's like a character talking to another character, and the character's like crawling out of a portal, and that portal was shot separately, and therefore they're up close and talking to each other, but it's like not shot at the same time. And it's just like, I just had to get very creative with like the kinds of stories that I tell. But like when I wanted to do this like big romantic drama, I was like, there's no way, like they have to kiss, they have to be like holding each other. There's no way around it. So it's like, that's the thing, like I've said, like there's really nothing you can't do like film-wise without enough like creativity. But I think I might make the one exception being like a romance film, just because like how do you not have them making some kind of physical contact? What makes a hero? And it's this idea of like sacrifice might not always be like, sometimes like it's more noble to like, or rather you can be a giving person and also not always be the one making the sacrifice. And that's kind of a problem I had with the last Rise of the Dead movie that we did, is that movie, the one in 2019, ends with a character basically giving up her life like as a sacrifice, but I feel like in terms of how it's motivated, like the reasoning is not good. I feel like I regret the choice to make that character sacrifice themselves, so I kind of wanted to make another Rise of the Dead movie that kind of serves as this, not that, and I kind of wanted to market it as like a standalone piece, and not, because 2 out of the 4 movies are not very good, and so I didn't want to like encourage people to go and watch the other ones. I wanted to make something you could just watch on its own. But if you have seen the 2019 one, there's kind of this parallel between the two, where it's like in one story, it's like, you know, there's one character who is just willing to give up everything at all times. He doesn't care about himself at all. And then there's another, and I want to say like, yes, and you can still be a giving person, but still love your life. And I just wanted to like end the series on a more hopeful note than I did the last time, just because like it was like totally unintentional. Whereas like years later, I was like, I don't know if this was the right message to be sending with this ending. So I kind of wanted to just like, it, like this Rise of the Dead series has kind of just been one giant course correction, where it's like each movie, it's like, well, the last one, ooh, we made some mistakes, so let's make another one to like fix it. It's just kind of just been like giant, like I said, it's like a passing a baton, and it's just like each movie kind of like retcons the last one in some way. And so like with this one, like I finally did it. I've been wanting to make a good zombie movie for the past 8 years, and I finally have one that I'm like actually satisfied with. This is actually the end, you know. I feel like a lot of my movies just kind of like mesh genres in a weird way, where it's like, and that's something that I've like really struggled with in terms of film festival submissions. This film in particular, I've submitted to enough film festivals that I kind of know, like I don't, obviously a selection is never guaranteed, but I kind of know like when I like see it's like, okay, this event, like Sundance is not going to want my movie, but like maybe this event, like this seems like the right theme, the right thing. The thing with this movie is like, it's like I don't know what to do with it, because like a lot of like, I've submitted to a lot of horror events, and like I've gotten like more rejections than I was expecting compared to like other films that I've made. And I think it's just because like it's really not a horror movie, even though it does have zombies in it. There's like horror elements to it, so it's like, it's kind of like a problem I have with a lot of my movies. It's like, what do I market this as? That being said, I make a lot of like romantic type stories. Although I have been like, I've started getting into horror. Like I've been watching a lot of, as I've been making this movie, I've been watching a lot of horror movies. I'm actually working on an animated horror short right now. As like and then for once it's like, I've made these 4 zombie movies, and the first 2 were like, you know, these like unintentional comedies, and then the third one was this like psychological drama, and the fourth one's like a romance. But like I'm actually making like a straight up horror movie now, so that'll be something cool to look forward to. This isn't really a genre, but I've been like asked a lot at this festival, like what kind of movies do you want to make? And I think if I had to summarize like the kinds of movies I want to make, is just I like taking beliefs and lessons that I've learned and like transforming them into films somehow. A lot of like, I don't want to like be like a teacher per se, but every single one of my movies, there's definitely like a very, very specific message that I want to share. I would never want to make just like, and again, like no disrespect to these kinds of films, but I wouldn't want to make just like a short where it's just 2 people shooting at each other for 5 minutes. You know, like I enjoy that stuff for sure. Like who doesn't? I just like I wouldn't want to. That's not what I want to make personally. If that makes sense, yeah.
It makes perfect.
That's what like I really love how like don't get me wrong. Like, I love like just classic horror movies, but I also love how like this is like a horror festival. But like how loose the definition is. We're like I have no idea what any film is going to be. Like there's puppets and cake being eaten and town full of cannibals. It's just like you never know what you're gonna get. I love that. How it's like it's all like kind of under the same umbrella, but not really. It's cool stuff. I want to say is that I think there's a lot of different ways you could read things, and even just like from what I've talked to people at this festival, people are like, "Wow, that's very different from what I was thinking." But I think the main thing to take away is that you don't always have like the main I think message I want to share is that like you don't always have to be the one that's giving. It's okay to just like live for yourself and not have to like kind of embrace the reality that something is over and kind of not have to feel like you owe that person something.
Nice.